From the moment Yvonne De Carlo first opened her brilliant blue eyes in September 1922, her life seemed destined to swerve between triumph and heartache, glamour and disillusionment. Born in Vancouver, Canada, to a mother who treated her more like a doll to be groomed than a daughter to be nurtured, Yvonne started life amid swirling rumors about her father, William, whose series of shady dealings forced him to abandon his family under mysterious conditions. Growing up without him, Yvonne absorbed her mother's fierce determination to make a star out of this tiny girl with dark hair and an uncanny sparkle. Her mother, Marie, had craved a little dancer, a glossy princess of the stage. When Yvonne emerged at birth and the hospital's corridors echoed with Marie's exclamation, "I want a girl, it must be a girl, I want a dancer," it was as though this child had no other path but performing. Yet real life left no space for fantasy. Marie had to raise Yvonne alone on a thin budget while scrounging for ways to move her daughter closer to that big Hollywood dream. Their lean existence formed a brittle foundation for Yvonne, who grew up longing for the father she never really knew. Clashes and confusion about who he really was only deepened that ache. Years later, as an adult, Yvonne would drop a scandalous revelation about her father's true identity. But as a girl, she simply moved forward, spurred on by her mother's unwavering ambition. By her teenage years, Yvonne's beauty had begun to border on the cinematic. The combination of her vivid eyes, lustrous hair, and burgeoning sense of grace made people pause in wonder. The mother-daughter duo's big break came when Yvonne placed second in the Miss Venice Beauty Contest in 1940, a minor triumph that nonetheless changed her destiny. A talent scout spotted her that day and encouraged her to audition for a chorus line at the Earl Carroll Theater on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, promising an open door into the entertainment capital she and her mother had dreamed of for so long. That first audition turned sour in the worst possible way. The revered booking agent showed far too much interest in scrutinizing Yvonne's figure, and did not hide that he was more interested in her physical attributes than her potential. Feeling demeaned and outraged, Yvonne and her mother stormed out, refusing to exchange her dignity for a job. But that did not mean they were willing to give up. Desperate to prove themselves in Hollywood, especially after this humiliating encounter, they headed across town to a rival nightclub, the Florentine Gardens, hoping for a stroke of luck. There, Yvonne was forced to tap dance before a rowdy audience while the manager, in an unsettling display, turned her future over to the audience, saying, "Folks, is she in or is she out?" Amid whistles and shouts, the crowd roared its approval. She soon rose from a lowly chorus girl to a featured dancer, bedazzling the Florentine Gardens patrons each night. Yet the clock was ticking in ways she could not ignore. As a Canadian citizen, she was performing without proper legal status, and immigration was not about to overlook a showgirl's rising fame. Sure enough, her lack of a green card caught up with her. She was detained and deported back to Canada. The blow must have felt like the end of her pursuit, but then fate intervened. Niels Granlund, the Florentine Gardens manager, recognized a real star in Yvonne and penned a heartfelt letter to Canadian authorities, promising steady employment and support if she were allowed to return. His lobbying won the day, and Yvonne slipped back into Los Angeles life by the slimmest margin, forging ahead with new resolve. By the early 1940s, the film industry had begun to take notice of her. She secured a handful of minor roles and even earned a contract with Paramount. These might have been bit parts, maidens, extras with a line or two, or sidekicks to bigger names, but they kept Yvonne in front of cameras, letting her soak up knowledge about sets, lighting, and how to handle the relentless demands of Hollywood. In 1942, she caught a small role in Road to Morocco, one of the popular Bob Hope and Bing Crosby adventures, acting as a handmaiden to Dorothy Lamour. It was a small but visible cameo. Though she was overshadowed by Lamour's star power, the Hollywood grapevine began to label Yvonne a threat to Dorothy. An unintended rivalry Yvonne probably could have done without. Her life was heading toward complicated intersections of opportunity and sabotage. Stepping too quickly up the ladder might endear you to some producers, but it could also provoke jealousy or condemnation from those who feared competition. One of her first notable affairs was with Billy Wilder, the respected director on the brink of making Double Indemnity, a masterful film that would define the film noir genre. Wilder and Yvonne became an item, with Yvonne describing him as the first love of my life. Yet she also admitted that physically, he did not match her fantasy of an ideal man. The entire relationship had an air of precariousness to it. Wilder was separated from his wife, but not divorced. He and Yvonne carried on their affair in a small rented hideaway, perhaps romantically clandestine, but also filled with the tension of an uncertain future. A harsh reality soon shattered her illusions. Wilder dropped her to pursue a relationship with another up-and-coming actress, Doris Dowling. The blow left Yvonne reeling, humiliated. She channeled her heartbreak into a vow that her revenge would come from her own success, not from retaliation. In a stroke of luck, that success arrived swiftly. A major studio was preparing Salome, where she danced, a Technicolor extravaganza, and they wanted a fresh face to play the exotic dancing lead. Producers initially saw it as a role for someone new, and Yvonne found herself competing among a reported 20,000 hopefuls. Legend has it that her victory owed something to her status as a beloved pinup girl among the Royal Canadian Air Force. Spurred on by two pilot friends, she orchestrated a grassroots fan campaign to push her name to the top. Whether that rumor is entirely accurate or partly embellished, it's certain that Yvonne's cunning and publicity savvy were in play. When the dust settled, she had landed the lead role, one that would propel her into full-blown stardom. The film itself was not a critical gem, but audiences lined up to watch her dance on screen. Overnight, she became a luminous pinup queen, her face and figure plastered in magazines and pinned up on military barracks walls. With Salome came a fresh start, a new studio, Universal, and the promise of an ascendant career. As always, though, heartbreak lurked around the corner. At a release party for another film, Yvonne encountered Howard Hughes. The eccentric billionaire and movie mogul was known for his obsessive, sometimes bizarre pursuit of beautiful actresses. His track record of seducing starlets was infamous, and Yvonne's encounter was no different. He revealed in that first conversation that he had seen Salome, where she danced 5 times, and had flown to Vancouver specifically to court her. One might have expected Yvonne, with the memory of Wilder's betrayal fresh in her mind, to reject Hughes's strong-arm seduction. Their romance ignited fast. In a matter of days, they found themselves entangled, with Hughes taking her up in his private planes and teaching her to take off and land, though he never let her practice the actual flying. He kept her close but also aloof. She poured genuine emotion into the relationship, but Hughes showed little reciprocity. He refused to acknowledge their affair publicly, gave no hint of proposing, and played with her affections in a cool, detached manner. Feeling used, she eventually ended it, more devastated by her illusions being shattered once again. In the aftermath, she embraced the single life with a near-reckless abandon, dating high-profile men like Robert Stack and Burt Lancaster. The press dubbed her Hollywood's #1 bachelor girl, a label she leaned into. though behind the scenes she must have yearned for something more meaningful. In 1947, while filming Brute Force, a film noir starring her then-lover Burt Lancaster, Yvonne's attention drifted toward another co-star, Howard Duff. He was handsome, charismatic, and, unlike Hughes, seemed eager to discuss marriage. For Yvonne, that eagerness alone was appealing. They announced their engagement, and for a short while she looked poised to settle down. But it didn't take long for her to see Duff's demons. His dependence on alcohol ran deep, and she feared a future fraught with chaos. Back in the professional arena, Yvonne was establishing herself as a queen of Technicolor, a reputation that came from her roles in lavish costume dramas and musicals that popped on color film. For 3 straight years, Hollywood cameramen singled her out as their top color star. But her yearning to be recognized as more than an ornamental beauty led her to chase noir and gritty black and white film roles. She landed a coveted part in Criss Cross, again opposite Burt Lancaster, hoping to wow critics as a seductive femme fatale. Her performance, however, met with lukewarm reactions. Some critics saw glimpses of promise, but overall they deemed her portrayal uneven, causing her to slink back into the swirl of Technicolor musicals she had tried so hard to leave behind. Through it all, her private life continued to whiplash between desire and disaster. In one production, she found herself reunited with Howard Duff, the ex-fiancé whose drinking had driven them apart. In another, she took up with a stuntman named Jock Mahoney on set, falling pregnant and envisioning a calmer chapter in her life. But those hopes were dashed when doctors discovered she had an ovarian cyst that required surgery, resulting in the heartbreaking loss of her baby. Rather than support her, Mahoney wandered into a fling with actress Margaret Field. Yvonne was left to nurse her wounds alone. By the early 1950s, exhaustion and heartbreak weighed on her. Yet the cycle of romance flared up again on a film called Shotgun, where she met Bob Morgan, another rugged stuntman. At first, they resisted an affair. He was married with a daughter, and Yvonne did not want to break up his marriage. Life intervened in a tragic way. Just a few months later, Morgan's wife passed away, leaving him single and grief-stricken. They reconnected, free this time to let their passion run its course. Their union led them to marriage on November 21st, 1955, a date Yvonne De Carlo greeted with both relief and trepidation. Finally, at 33 years old, the so-called #1 bachelor girl had walked down the aisle. Amid all this drama, her biggest cinematic break arrived when the legendary Cecil B. DeMille cast her as Sephora Moses' wife in The 10 Commandments. The film was an epic on a scale seldom seen, with star-studded casts, massive sets, and an expectation of perfection from everyone involved. Yvonne, nervous about matching the grandeur, took classes in everything from basket weaving to animal herding, determined to appear as authentic as possible. DeMille, however, had one complaint. Her eyes were too striking, too modern, too bright a shade of blue. He wanted to darken them for historical plausibility. After some pushback, he relented, leaving her with her natural color for the role. The film was a juggernaut, and critics buzzed that De Carlo might earn a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Stung by earlier dismissals, Yvonne insisted on campaigning for Best Actress instead. The gamble ended badly. Her ego cost her any nomination, and while she remained well regarded, the chance at Oscar recognition slipped through her fingers. If that disappointment stung, a much deeper blow was waiting around the corner. In 1963, while filming How the West Was Won, Bob Morgan suffered a terrifying accident. He was performing a train robbery stunt that involved balancing on a log between 2 cars, one of which carried a huge load of timber. The chain broke, sending tons of wood crashing down on him. Miraculously, he survived, but his injuries were severe. He spent years trying to regain the ability to walk without assistance, an ordeal that left Yvonne juggling medical bills, caring for their 2 children, and feeling increasingly desperate. They sued the studio for unsafe working conditions, but the legal battle dragged on without clear resolution. Meanwhile, money dwindled, and her one-time glamorous star status counted for little when she needed to put food on the table. In this moment of dire need, she reached out to an old friend, John Wayne, who offered her a role in his Western comedy, McClintock. It was a smaller part than Yvonne might have taken a decade earlier, but she swallowed her pride, grateful for the paycheck. Even that proved insufficient. Then came the unexpected salvation. A call from casting directors for a new TV sitcom called The Munsters. They wanted her to play Lily Munster, a vampiric yet domestic mother figure in a kooky family reminiscent of the Addams family. Everything about it stood in opposition to the luscious Technicolor roles she used to command. It promised to be silly and comedic. She hesitated, feeling her reputation as a regal star might vanish. But with Bob Morgan still recovering and bills piling high, she saw no choice. She took the part. To her surprise, the Munsters ended up a delight. The cast welcomed her warmly without resenting her glamorous past. She discovered she had a flair for comedic timing. The producers gave her a simple directive: play Lily as though she were Donna Reed, referencing the wholesome TV mom from The Donna Reed Show. Yvonne took that advice to heart, injecting Lily with a breezy maternal warmth and a sly wink at the absurdities around her. Audiences adored it. She even outfitted her personal Jaguar sedan with spooky ornaments to match her new image, though fans kept stealing the decorations as prized souvenirs. Where some might have assumed the Munsters signaled the end of her career as a serious actress, it instead cemented her status as an enduring star. Her comedic knack was a revelation to viewers who had only known her as an exotic femme in costume dramas. Then another surprising opportunity arrived. Stephen Sondheim was developing a new musical called Follies, focused on aging performers confronting their past. He saw Yvonne as perfect for one of the roles. She landed on Broadway, belting out the show-stopping tune, I'm Still Here, which became a personal anthem. She truly was still there, weathering every disappointment and heartbreak, forging a path forward. Yet heartbreak continued to shadow her. In 1973, after a decade of struggle following Bob Morgan's debilitating accident, their marriage crumbled under the weight of stress, medical bills, and emotional scars. They divorced on grounds of irreconcilable differences. Over the next years, Yvonne publicly revealed layer after layer of her complicated life. In a 1975 interview, she shattered the story she had long told about her father, claiming that the petty criminal William Middleton was not in fact her biological dad. The truth, she said with only vague details, was that her real father was Polynesian, a fact she had kept hidden for reasons she never fully explained. Some believed the trauma surrounding her father's disappearance and her mother's manipulations played a role in her secrecy. By 1987, Yvonne decided to lay it all bare in an autobiography. She wrote candidly of her experiences with the 22 lovers she had taken, many of them well-known stars, as well as the disillusionment she felt toward the superficial vanity of certain Hollywood personalities. Men with more brain than brawn had begun to appeal to her, she said, musing that Albert Einstein might have been her ideal partner, had she encountered him in the right place and time. It was a startling admission from a woman once revered as the archetype of physical allure, a testament to how her rocky relationships had led her to value substance above all else. In 1997, one of her 2 sons died suddenly, plunging her into a depression she never fully escaped. Not long after, she experienced a minor stroke that required long-term care. The once glamorous star of Salome, where she danced in the Ten Commandments, ended up spending her final stretch in a care facility, quietly living out her days until, in 2007, at the age of 84, her heart finally gave out. The curtain thus closed on a life that had unspooled like an epic film, full of love affairs that soared and crashed, a mother whose controlling influence never fully left her, and a father whose identity remained uncertain even into her old age. She had walked the dazzling path from being an unknown teenage chorus girl to a major Hollywood player, rubbing elbows with titans like Billy Wilder and Howard Hughes, performing comedic stunts as Lily Munster, and belting out show tunes on Broadway for Stephen Sondheim. Her autobiography reveals that her longing for a stable love and a stable family never entirely disappeared, even though she married and divorced and lost children along the way. That heartbreak might have fueled her drive, pushing her to chase roles, men, or any new excitement on the horizon. Some critics might summarize her life as a cycle of poor romantic choices, but it's more nuanced than that. For a woman in Hollywood at that time, especially with a childhood overshadowed by abandonment, the hunt for genuine affection could become a lifelong quest. She found glimpses of it with Billy Wilder, with Howard Hughes, with others, never quite capturing the permanence she craved. If her final confessions about preferring an Albert Einstein type were somewhat tongue-in-cheek, they also hinted at her disappointment with the shallow glitter of the Hollywood set. That's the story of Yvonne De Carlo, the dancer her mother always wanted, the heartbreak magnet who kept refusing to stay down, the comedic TV icon who found warmth and acceptance in a ghoulish sitcom family, and ultimately, a Hollywood survivor whose memory endures wherever fans gather to watch the old classics and wonder about the lives these stars led when the cameras stopped rolling. May she rest in the spotlight of our collective imagination, where heartbreak, humor, and pure stardust converge. After all, that convergence is where true Hollywood legends are born, and Yvonne De Carlo, through every misstep and triumph, earned her place among them. And if you've enjoyed this journey through her world, her love affairs, her stumbles, her reinventions, take a moment to appreciate the sheer force of her determination. She reminds us that in a land famous for illusions, it's the resilience behind the scenes that forges a star who can last beyond the final fade to black. Who knows? Maybe, just maybe, that was the real magic that kept her dancing from one chapter to the next, her eyes forever shining in Technicolor. Here's to Yvonne De Carlo, the woman behind Lily Munster's playful grin and Salome's seductive dance, the dreamer who refused to settle, and the star whose glow endures in old reels and new hearts. Keep her story in mind the next time you watch a classic film or a nostalgic rerun. Somewhere behind the comedic lines or the swirling veil of a costume, Yvonne's own heartbreak and hope are still dancing, waiting to remind us that a true Hollywood spirit never quits. Thank you for joining this look at her remarkable life, and we hope you'll stay tuned for more tales of the screen's unforgettable legends.